The widow had walked for 3 days beneath the scorching western sun, her little boy barely able to keep up. She had sold her wedding ring for a loaf of bread that was already gone. Every door in every town had closed in her face. Then, just as she was about to lose hope forever, a tall rancher stopped his horse in front of her. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask where she'd come from. He simply looked at the frightened boy holding her hand and quietly asked, "Can you cook for a broken family?" The answer to that single question would change all three of their lives forever. Emily Carter never imagined life could become this cruel. Only 6 months earlier, she had lived happily on a small farm with her husband, Daniel, and their 8-year-old son, Noah. They weren't wealthy, but they laughed often, prayed together every evening, and dreamed of watching Noah grow into a fine young man. Everything changed the night Daniel was killed while protecting a neighbor during a robbery. With no money and no land legally in her name, the bank seized the farm within weeks. Emily packed 2 small bags. One held clothes, the other held Daniel's Bible. That was all she had left. For weeks, mother and son wandered from one frontier town to another. Emily worked wherever someone would pay her a few coins, washing laundry, sweeping porches, baking bread. Sometimes they ate, sometimes they didn't. Each night Noah smiled bravely, pretending he wasn't hungry. Emily cried only after he had fallen asleep. One afternoon they arrived in the dusty town of Red Creek. The streets were crowded, shops buzzed with customers. Cowboys laughed outside the saloon. But nobody noticed the exhausted widow and her son. Emily asked for work everywhere. Every answer was the same. No vacancies. We already hired someone. Move along. As sunset painted the sky orange, Noah whispered, "Mom, where are we sleeping tonight?" Emily couldn't answer, because she didn't know. Just then, the sound of horse hooves echoed through the street. A large rancher stopped beside them. His broad shoulders carried years of hard work. His weathered face looked stern, yet strangely tired. He noticed Noah trying to hide his hunger. After a long silence he asked, "Can you cook?" Emily blinked. "Yes." He nodded once. "My ranch needs someone to run the kitchen." She hesitated. "I can't leave my son." The rancher looked directly at Noah. "I wasn't asking you to." His name was Jacob Hayes. Years earlier, his wife had died during childbirth. Since then, his large ranch had become quiet. The workers respected him, but no one smiled anymore. Meals were cold, rooms gathered dust, laughter had disappeared. Jacob didn't need another employee. He needed warmth inside a house that had forgotten what family felt like. Emily accepted. The next morning they arrived at Hayes Ranch. It was the largest place Noah had ever seen. Wide fields stretched for miles. Hundreds of cattle grazed peacefully. Cowboys worked from sunrise until dark. The ranch house itself felt enormous. Yet somehow, lonely. Emily immediately began cleaning the neglected kitchen. She baked fresh bread, prepared beef stew, made apple pie using old recipes Daniel had loved. That evening every ranch hand gathered around the long wooden table. For the first time in years. They laughed. One cowboy smiled. "I almost forgot what real food tastes like." Jacob quietly watched from the end of the table. Something inside him softened. Noah quickly found his place as well. He helped feed chickens, collected eggs, carried water. Even the toughest cowboys couldn't resist his cheerful spirit. The lonely ranch slowly felt alive again. Weeks became months. Emily repaired torn curtains, planted flowers outside the porch, filled empty shelves with homemade jam. Every corner of the house slowly changed. But the biggest change happened inside Jacob. Each morning he found himself looking forward to breakfast. Not because of the food. Because Emily always greeted everyone with kindness. Something he hadn't heard in years. One rainy afternoon Noah wandered into the old barn. There he found a dusty wooden rocking horse. Jacob smiled sadly. It belonged to my little daughter. Noah carefully brushed away the dust. Can I fix it? Jacob nodded. Together they spent hours repairing the toy. That evening Jacob realized something surprising. For the first time since losing his family, the pain didn't feel quite so heavy. One evening Emily prepared supper later than usual. Jacob noticed she looked pale. You've worked enough today. She smiled gently. I'm fine. But moments later she nearly collapsed. Weeks of exhaustion had finally caught up with her. Jacob carried her to the porch and called the town doctor. The doctor smiled after examining her. Nothing serious. She simply hasn't allowed herself to rest. Jacob looked at Emily. When was the last time someone took care of you? She couldn't remember. From that day forward, everything changed. Jacob insisted she rest whenever needed. The ranch hands handled the heavier chores. Noah proudly announced, "My mom finally has people who care about her." Emily wiped away tears. For the first time since Daniel died, she believed that might actually be true. Autumn arrived with golden fields. Harvest celebrations filled the ranch. Music echoed beneath the stars. Everyone danced, except Jacob. He quietly stood beside the fence watching Emily laugh with Noah. One old cowboy nudged him. You've been lonely long enough. Jacob smiled. I know. Late that evening Jacob found Emily sitting alone on the porch. The house feels different, he said. Emily looked toward the glowing windows. It's because people are happy again. Jacob shook his head. No, it's because you're here. Silence filled the cool night air. Finally he spoke. I asked if you could cook. Emily smiled softly. I remember. But what you really did. You brought life back into this ranch. Months later Jacob gathered everyone outside the ranch house. The workers stood smiling. Noah looked confused. Jacob walked toward Emily holding a small velvet box. I once believed this house would stay empty forever. You proved me wrong. He knelt. Emily Carter, would you and Noah make this ranch your home forever? Tears filled her eyes. Noah whispered, please say yes. Emily looked toward the endless fields where hope had found her again. She smiled through happy tears. Yes. The lonely ranch was never lonely again. The kitchen became the heart of the house. Children's laughter echoed across the fields. Cowboys celebrated every holiday together. Visitors often asked Jacob what had saved his broken family. He always smiled before answering. It all began the day I asked one tired widow a very simple question. Can you cook for a broken family? Sometimes, the smallest question opens the door to the greatest blessing. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment, subscribe for more